Welcome back to the layout, everyone. Thanks again for coming back. Thanks again for subscribing. And thought of a new project, and this one's going to be returning back to the layout for some scenery work. And it's going to go through some of the things that I've already touched on in other videos, such as backdrop and some of the scenery work. So I'll kind of show those things as we go along, but I'm not going to go into detail. If you want to see the scenery work, the backdrop work, I've got a couple other videos up on my channel that you should be able to find. If not, if I remember, I'll try and throw show notes, links in the show notes, so you can get to those quickly in case this is the first video you're watching on my channel. If it is, hope you enjoy it and hope you can get something out of it. So I'll just give you the rundown of the scene of what I'm planning to do and the thoughts behind what I want to accomplish. So here's the area, and you can see here it's a long double-tracked siding coming off the main right here. And as you can see here, I've got two grain drying towers already made. I made those. Those are Walther's kits. I really enjoyed making them, actually, and painted them a artificial metallic color. Oh, this isn't in there. This is from a previous project. And then what I plan to do is, well, first of all, I'm going to put in a backdrop along here. And then the corner there is going to be just a hill. The styrofoam there will represent the hill as it'll eventually be. I'm also going to put a backdrop in along this wall here. This is possibly going to be future expansion here, so I'm only going to bring the backdrop to here for now, just so I can finish off this scene. And so I'll ballast this track. Again, it's laid directly on the styrofoam in this case. So I'll ballast it pretty heavily, being that it's going to be an industrial track. And then I have several Walther's grain towers, two of them actually. So between the kits themselves and the possibly even some PVC pipe to represent the silos, I'm going to go ahead and kit bash the grain tower to fit in this area. I'd like to be honest, I'd really like a massive structure in this area. It's one of my favorite things is, just really big grain towers. So that's the plan. And I've already got some of the stuff started, so I'm going to kind of get you, like I said, I've already touched on a few of the things in terms of backdrop painting and scenery, so I'm going to flip back over and show you what I've got so far. So I've already gone ahead and cut some masonite. This is just tempered hardboard, whatever you want to call it, and I painted the smooth side, and the rough side is obviously going to be on the back. And I cut multiple lengths to measure in between, like this area back in here, between, I don't know if it's going to show up on the video, but yeah, I think it's kind of in back here, right here. There's just a 1x2 that I glued to the wall, and then coming across over to the 2x4 here. So that'll be this first piece. And then I've got another piece here, again, that I cut and painted. And this is just basic, blue, sky blue. It's the same blue that I've used around the layout. It's a pretty light blue, but it happens to be a paint that I had. It's just standard latex satin finish. It might have a little bit too much of a shine to it, but my intention this time is to come around with the airbrush and airbrush on some clouds and stuff like that. So paint caught a spider, actually, so it must have been, when it was drying, it worked as a good bug catch. I'll have to get him out of there. I don't think I want a spider in the middle of my scene. So that'll be the basic scene as it works out. And the only thing I might end up doing is I cut these 12 inches high, and I may, just to extend the sky up above this a little bit, I'm going to paint this area blue. I've had this long-term devious plan of possibly putting in a second layer on this layout. So for now, I'm going to leave this at 12 inches high, and then have, if a second level comes in, I've heard like 12, 14 inches to the second level is actually pretty good. And then I'd only have the second level come out maybe you know, like 18 inches. So there'd still be enough room to get underneath there and switch and have lights under it and everything. So I don't want to extend this backdrop too high and then have to tear it out later. So for now, I'm maybe just put a strip of blue paint on the wall itself, just to hide the cinder block and everything. But that's the backdrop. I'm going to tack that down. I've got some basic finishing nails that I can put in there, and then I'll just touch up any nail holes. For this piece here, I wanted slightly more temporary, so I'm going to use hot glue. I know that probably isn't the greatest thing in the world, but it'll be enough to hold it in place. And there's some stuff that I have stored behind here that in case I ever need to get out and it has to come up and over, I'll be able to pop this piece off and then just re-hot glue it if I need to. So that'll be the backdrop for that. I think I'm going to get those mounted, and then I'm going to start ballasting this track. That seems to make the most sense. And then I'm going to start taking dimensions for this kit. So you can see here, this is just some of the pieces from the Walthers kit. You know, so as you can see, it's quite a tall structure actually. But here's some of the silos themselves. So I'm going to see how to rearrange them such that I can have you know, the delivery, the covered unloading and loading part, and then have everything line up. So that's the basic plan. Let's see how it turns out. Okay, well, through the magic of time-lapse here and some creative editing, I've gone ahead and gotten in the backdrops, and as you can see, up in here I did end up painting just a few inches above the actual end of the backdrop, but for the time being it's going to help if the buildings go above the backdrop. It'll still look like sky, and give it a little bit of a blue color. So I extended it all the way over to this section, even though this scene will probably end, you know, somewhere around this switch, the turnout rather. In this section back here, I actually need to get access to some stuff back here. So I have to come up with a creative way to be able to make this backdrop removable. So I'm going to come back and finish that up later. However, I did go ahead and ballast. And you can see, maybe you can see it, but the glue is still just freshly applied. And so I've got this whole section ballasted, and down at the end here I just created a couple little piles to act as wheel stops. Inexpensive little stops for the back. While I'm doing this, I'm probably going to come through and actually ballast this main line, you know, right in this area here. That's actually using Woodland Scenics. I use a coarser ballast for the sidings, just to show that, you know, it's a little bit not as kept well, and then I use a Woodland Scenics medium ballast for the main lines. So I'll probably come back and finish that up at some point. But that's the backdrops installed. Like, I ended up hot gluing everything in place. It's holding pretty well. So we'll see how that holds up over time. If I have to, I can come back and nail those in. So for now, I'm going to let the glue dry on the ballast, and then I think I'm going to actually start working on some scenery and then figuring out my building layout so I can start kit bashing those. One thing I did want to touch on with the ballast, I want to give credit to the person that came up with this. I want to say that somebody made this comment on one of my videos. I should go back and look at the ballasting video. It might have actually been on that particular video. Or I know I've read it, I've seen it commented on other places, but to give credit where credit is due, I didn't come up with this one. But I wear contacts, and I finally used up a container of my contact solution. And the recommendation is take your matte medium or your whatever you're using, diluted white glue or whatever, fill this up, you know, take the top off, fill it up, and then this makes a extremely convenient way to distribute the matte medium when you're, say, ballasting or working on scenery. I had been using the eyedropper technique and filling it up and then dripping it in place, filling it up. Wholly time consuming. Compared to this, I just ripped through all of that ballasting and gluing in a matter of seconds. I didn't even use up a large portion of this. So once it's empty, fill it back up, and you're good to go. So great little tip. Hopefully you can use it, and hopefully I can find the person that recommended this in my ballasting video, so I can give credit where credit's due. So just a little tip there. Okay, so I've got the ballast in, and it's all glued down. And at some point here in the midst of this project, I'll come back and I'll do the main line, because I think this whole scene is going to get finished at the same time. So might as well do the main line as well. So in the meantime, though, I wanted to start mocking up the actual grain silos. And in mocking it up, it looks like what I'm going to be able to do is the kit that Walthers comes with. You get two different pieces for the silos. You get what I'll call the side profile and then the end profile. And let's see. So you get these two pieces here, and you can see they're one's a little bit shorter, but then they interlock. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to create the silo like such. Well, it'll lock better when it's actually being adhered in place. And then this edge will butt up against the backdrop. And then what that'll allow me to do then is extend these silos well past, because the kit calls for having 4 of them only, and then assuming that you have 2 of these panels plus 2 end panels. So as you can see here, I'm able to extend them out quite a ways using the 2 end caps, and then I'll be able to push it up against the backdrop and won't need to utilize one of these for the backside. I mean, really, what for? It's going to be against the backdrop. And then this is from, so there's 2 kits here. I bought 2 of these, and I'm going to kit bash them. So I'm going to use this main tower with the head house here and everything. And then I'm going to make it a little bit wider by using, this is intended to be an end panel, but I'm going to use one of the end panels here and get a nice tall structure that way. I'll lean it up against here. And so that'll create a larger head house here. I think they're called head houses. I hope so. And then I'm going to put 2 more additional silos on the end here. Now what's going to I'm going to have to end up kit bashing is running along the top of here is the, I would assume, the conveyor system for getting the grain into the silos themselves. And with the Walthers kit, obviously I'll have enough to cover these 4 silos, but not enough to cover all of, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, so I'm going to be very short. But a little bit of evergreen styrene or plastrux, and I should be able to kit bash to extend that out. And then I think on this end here, what I'm going to have is the dryers, and then I'm gonna look up some prototype photos here and see what if these are even used, and if they're not, well, then I'm just gonna have to fudge them in and make it look like they belong here. But I believe what I'll have is some connecting piping over to like the head house and stuff like that. So that's the thought for now, and we'll go from there. So one of the things I'm finally getting to use here, I actually have a square structure that I can use them with, is the right clamp clamping system that I bought a while back. Right way, I'm sorry, not right clamp, right way clamping system. So it's kind of nice. You just split them in half and boop, there you go. I already started to glue this one just so I could mock it up a little bit. But you can see it holds it in place really well. So then I can come back, and what's also nice, and I probably didn't even need to glue this, but you can see here's the interior. But it holds it in place real well. I probably could have just mocked it up using the clamps. Now that I think about it, they hold it in place pretty well. So with these in place, I'm going to go ahead and take, this is my, this is by Micromark. It's Same Stuff. Essentially, I believe what they were referring to is 10x7R, which was one of the probably original plastic welders out there. This isn't really it's not really a glue. It's I believe the active ingredient in here is methyl ethyl ketone, if I'm not mistaken, or methyl ethyl ketone is used in the making of it. I don't know if it's on the back here, but essentially what this does is it softens the plastic up, and then as the plastic recures, it basically welds the two pieces together, and you get a really nice strong bond. The great thing is it's almost like super glue in that it works really quickly. The downside of it is, and I don't know if you can see it on this one, it doesn't have the surface tension of water. However, it has the consistency of water, and because it doesn't have the surface tension, it flows into every crack and crevice. So you have to be careful when you're bracing something with your finger. Suddenly you'll feel the cold fluid on your finger, and you'll leave a nice fingerprint right in your model. And it's very difficult once the plastic is softened to really, you're going to have to come back and gently sand it out. And so I'll just warn you to be careful as you're working with a product like this, that you're aware of where your fingers are and how it's how this stuff is flowing into the cracks and crevices. So the first thing I like to do using my Xuron sprue nippers, these have a nice fine cut to them. You want to make sure that you don't use these for pretty much anything else, though. With as fine a tip as these are, they're made really only for cutting plastic out of the sprues. But then I just use my sanding stick and get off any burrs on your joint surfaces, and there's a lot of them on this particular kit, so I'm just going through and sanding them off. I know it looks kind of weird, but I'm using the middle of it just because that's where there's a nice flat surface. One small little tip I'll share: when I get sprues like this from kits, what I like to do is if there's any long straight pieces, kind of like this one here, I'll just cut it off, and then these work really well as paint stirrers for, you know, when you gotta stir paint. What else would a paint stirrer be for? But you can see here I've got a bunch of them that I've used over time, and I've got individual color. You know, that way you got one per color. So I've got a whole array of them on the workbench here. So I just got a little bucket that I keep them in, and my version of recycling. One other thing I should mention when working with this plastic welder is always work from the inside of the model. If you work from the outside, because of the nature of what this is doing, if this was brickwork, for instance, it's just going to smear and melt the brickwork, and you're just going to have an unsightly mess along the edge. So you always want to apply it on the inside seam. And the nice thing about these Walthers kits is there's usually an edge here. Aside from the chamfer that they provide, there's usually an extra piece to provide some stick. The other thing I will come back and do is, once I've got the initial seam welded in with the plastic welder, I'm going to come back with some styrene, and I'll put corner braces in here to really kind of give the structure some strength. So I'm going to weld this seam up with the cement, and then I'm going to come back and I'll demonstrate how I do the corner braces. So this is a piece of from a Pike Stuff warehouse kit that I had, and I know that it's got some nice square edges on it, and it's also actually pre-scribed right here. So I'm just going to continue finishing this scribe off. And again, I'm just using the back edge of my X-Acto blade here, and it's just following this prescribed line. It will walk out of it if you press too hard, or if you're wobbling all over the place. However, if you come with some gentle strokes, it'll stay in line. So there we go. And then I'm going to just take straight edge and knock a piece off of this one. Start it with a few cuts and then come back with the back side of the blade. You want to be careful that when you've got this blade upside down that you don't press your finger on the knife edge. You're always using the knurled piece of the handle. So there, got that. And then I'm going to notch this corner because of the spine that runs on the edge there. Then I'm just going to take it. I usually put at least two of them, one, about splitting the structure into thirds. And you want to look for any lines if there's anything, like I don't want to put it around any of the windows obviously if there's going to be window frames put in from the inside, so you want to stay away from those. Actually, I need to dress this up a little bit. The other thing is if, especially for like this stuff here, if you roughen the edge up of the plastic, it gives it a good surface for this to really melt and to bite into. So I recommend doing that. So I'm going to take the structure here. Knock a little bit more off this corner actually. So that's one brace, and I'm gonna, again, I'll probably put another one down there just to give it a little extra strength in the corners and keep it from flexing. I mean, once it's in place, but if you ever have to move them for any reason, give it a little extra strength. So I'm gonna do another one of those and continue on. Okay, so now I've got two walls put on. This is actually going to be the back side of the structure, this here, and this is going to be against the backdrop. And you might wonder, well, why are you putting a back to this building? But ultimately it's because of this piece here, and then it's because of this piece here, and I need to finish off this part of the structure. So you're going to kind of see this, and it's going to be apparent if it's not there. So it'll give me something to glue to. So, but now what I'd like to do is I want to extend this to create a larger structure. So what I want to do is I want to come in and actually make this wall extend out slightly further. So what I've done is there's that spline that I was talking about that runs along the length of this spine here. So what I did was I just took my X-Acto blade and I carved out openings in it. And I'm going to use some scrap styrene that I've got laying around and just basically create like a, I don't know if you'd call this a lap joint. I guess technically it wouldn't be a lap joint because I'm not going to overlap the two pieces, but this will just create hopefully a joint because these two pieces are just going to be butted up against each other. Now I've filed these down, sanded them down as best I could, and we're going to go ahead and glue them down. Now this is somewhere where a part where the plastic welder will come in handy because it's going to help fill in any of the gaps that'll appear in between these two pieces. So for this I'm using actually my Fast Tracks switch template, and I just use it on the back side, and I'm going to go ahead and take this piece Now there is a little bit of a gap here. That's going to be a little bit hard to hide, so we'll have to see what I can do about hiding that once the structure is painted. I might even just have to run a piece of styrene down that and try and hide it. So we'll see what happens there as we move along. Okay, so I went ahead and I glued together, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels for the longer set of silos. And as you can see, I've just got the end caps on them on both ends, and then here's the smaller section that I'm going to have as well. So here's those. See if we can get them in the screen here. Now for these longer ones, these shorter ones, with this particular Walthers kit, they actually improved this quite a bit since the last time I built one of these. They actually have interlocking tabs right here, and they with the plastic welder, they snap together really well, and once the plastic weld takes hold, it's a nice solid joint there. And then also here on the corners themselves, kind of the same thing. So this one's pretty solid the way it is. I'm going to have to figure out how to blend this. It's the only thing I don't like about using these Walthers kits is you get these unsightly seams, and if you look at a real grain elevator, there's no seams there. This is just a cylinder. So I got to figure out how I'm going to go about blending this, and maybe I can just sand it, use some plastic weld in here to kind of, you know, I know I said don't do that, but I might try that just to see what happens. So that one's pretty solid. However, this is quite a large structure, and I'm a little worried about it over time, if I have to move it and paint it and all that good stuff. So what I have around is some evergreen styrene. This is just 0.125 0.125 by 0.25, and I think I'm just going to take this, and for some rigid, just to add a little bit of rigidity, I'm going to go ahead and put this across here like this, and then I'm going to put another one across here, and that should help stiffen this up as a whole. And I'm actually going to stand it up and kind of use it as like an I-beam in your house, or a floor joist, I guess, kind of like a 2x8 in your floor joist, 2x10, whatever your house is made with. And then that'll hopefully help prevent or resist the flexing. I know it seems like a little bit of a waste, you know, using a nice piece of styrene like this, you know, inside the structure, but I'd rather be safe than sorry than have it fall apart on me while I'm trying to work on it and then have to re-glue it, or, you know, after I've painted it and then I mar up the paint and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those, and then we'll put them on the layout and see how they look. Okay, well, here's an overview of the kit bash structure. As you can see, I've got 4 silos on this side plus the 2 grain dryers, and then I've got the enlarged main structure, head house I think it's called, and then quite a few silos on the other side. So it's going to be a quite large structure. I'm pretty pleased with how big it's looking. I'd almost like it to be, I wish it could be a little bit taller, but working within the kit, you know, the silos are still pretty big, especially when you look at it compared to the car I've got in front of there. I think it's still going to be representative of a tracks that, it's got 2 tracks here, and once those are filled with grain cars, I think this structure will justify that many grain cars being dropped off at a given time. So, alright, well, I'm going to call it part 1 of this series. I have a feeling this is going to become a multi-part series just because of the, I don't want to use the word magnitude, that doesn't really seem right. It's a big project, no doubt. So far I've got the backdrop in, I've got the ballast on the track laid, and I've got the preliminary kit mocked up, if you will. And so I think the next steps I'm going to take in the next video will be finishing up the structure itself. I think I'm going to have to end up kitbashing a lot of the roof line of the silos. Walther's includes, well, this is the base of the what should have been the base of the silos, but I'm not going to use these. There's ones for the top as well that don't have the opening. I might use those for this group of 4, but for the larger ones I might just take sheet styrene and build my own tops. That's going to take a lot of carving with all the curves and everything, but we'll get there. And then painting the silos, I've seen some incredible models of silos with the, sometimes some of the silos are built with what appears to be stacked cylinders of concrete, so then in between wherever there's a joint you've got sediment from rainwater running down and deposits it's in the cracks, and then it streaks, and it's a really neat effect. I'm going to see if I can try and replicate that. I've got some ideas on how I want to do it. So if you know of any techniques, I would love to see them and hear them. I'd like to try it. I've never done it. I've never successfully done it, so that's kind of next project. And then of course scenery. I got a hills to build. I ordered some new plaster cloth because I ran out on one of the other projects I was working on, so I'm waiting for that to show up. So we'll see. At least 2 parts to this video, maybe 3 depending on how long they get, and we'll see what happens. But I'm pretty excited about this. That area of the layout's been open and empty for quite a while. I've had these kits sitting around, and so it's kind of fun to finally kick this into high gear. So I also wanted to touch on that. Some people have commented about wanting to get into shooting videos and stuff like that, and I want to encourage anyone who's even thinking about doing it to do it, even if it's just to shoot updates of your layout. I love watching that kind of stuff, seeing what other people are working on, seeing just other people's layouts. I don't belong to any clubs. I really, kind of unfortunately don't have the time with family and all my bike racing and stuff like that. So I don't get to see other people's layouts in person. So I do a lot of YouTube searches for people's layouts, and it actually encourages you to work on your layout, because now you kind of feel a little bit of a, hey, I need to get an update onto YouTube. Let's work on something. I've progressed more on my layout in the last year since I started shooting these videos than I did for the entire 5 years we've lived in this house. So it really helps you kind of motivate you in that regard. So I encourage everyone that's thinking about it to give it a shot, see what happens. And if you do, throw a link or a comment on my like any of my shows that I've uploaded, and I'll be happy to give you a plug, which segues into the paying it forward, as we started a few segments ago. And this week I want to plug Mike Fifer. It's Mike and F-I-F-E-R, full name. And it looks like he got caught by the Google, do you want to use your real name? And but I'll put a link to his channel in the show notes. And he does an N-scale, incredible N-scale layout. He's done some amazing videos on the backdrops that he does. He had a great one on track cleaning that I watched just the other day. So very informative, great length videos, anywhere from a few minutes to I think it was 20 some minutes on his backdrop one. So really informative stuff, fun to watch. And again, a lot of times when I'm working, I'll flip on one of those and listen as I work. So, wow, I'm out of breath. You'd think I'd be better being a cyclist. But anyway, that's it for this week. Like I said, I'll hopefully come back with a part 2, maybe part 3. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, please consider it. If you didn't like what you see, well, don't subscribe, because you won't get any better than next week. So, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.